This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about Replacements, the third episode in Season 1 of The Bad Batch, are two returning guests to Coffee with Kenobi. First, let's bring in Tom Gross.
Well, hello, everybody. It's good to be back on, and boy, always love talking about The Bad Batch.
Indeed. Well, this is not a Bad Batch situation. We've got some A-listers with us. Also joining us to discuss this episode is the guy that's usually on the week before a brand new Star Wars movie. But sorry, everybody, that is not what's happening now. There's no new Star Wars movie this week, but we do have the great Ryder Waldron back on the show. Welcome back, Ryder.
Hey, thanks, Dan. And I'm shocked. I was here ready to talk about the new movie, but we could talk about the Bad Batch too, I guess.
Yeah. We'll just do that. And I think it'll be a good conversation because we've got a very intriguing episode. And usually what we like to do is we're going to start out with an overall reactions to the episode and a letter grade. So Ryder, we'll just have you kick it off. What letter grade would you give the episode, and just give an overview of your thoughts on it?
I'm going to give it a B+ right now. I liked it. It was a solid episode. I liked some parts more than others. Some a little predictable, which is fine, but I love some of the tie-ins with the original trilogy, as well as kind of the prequels. It feels like we're kind of transitioning from the prequels to the original trilogy timeline. And I like learning more about the clones and what makes them tick, and seeing the uniqueness of all of them. So yeah, a solid episode, B+.
Excellent. Tom, what about you?
Yeah, let's remember that C is average, A is exceptional, so I give it a solid B in the middle of all that. And I'm pretty sure that my mind can be changed on this one as we have this conversation. But yeah, I give it a solid B as an initial reaction to it. Really enjoying the sort of the look at the building of the Empire and some of the initial projects, initiatives of the Empire. Really interested in Crosshair's part in all of that, the growth of Omega, and then, but here's why it's not an A or a B+. I'm feeling a little empty on the purpose of Clone Force 99 at this point.
Oh, well, that is interesting. I'm assuming you're going to talk about that through this conversation.
I think so. Yeah.
Good deal. All right, so I'm going to give this a C+. I enjoyed it. It's my favorite episode so far is still the second episode of the 3 in this first season. Part of me is reluctant. I was going to give it a C-, but I bumped it up a little bit because I thought, well, it's not really fair to give it a grade yet. You just got a small snippet of the story, but they all have to stand on their own, and they all have to have a specific purpose to them. I do think there's some key moments to be sure, and there's certainly a moment in this that is about as jarring as you're going to see in Star Wars. So we're definitely going to talk a lot about that. So let's just kick off the discussion. They're forced to take a detour in Replacements, leaving their friend Cut from the previous episode. And then right off the bat, we see some bonding on the shuttle. We see a discussion of rations and the fact that Wrecker is quite hungry, but he shares with Omega, but he's not necessarily used to that. In fact, Hunter flat out says, well, we're not used to having a kid around, but she doesn't seem to mind. And Omega, Ryder, tell me what you kind of have noticed about her. I mean, certainly through the first 2 episodes, but more importantly, the fact that she's willing to share her rations and just her overall spirit. Because I feel like a lot of kids in this situation with a couple of rough and tumble soldiers would not react with the same bravery that Omega has.
Yeah, it sometimes feels like Omega is the adult in the group, and she's teaching some of the Bad Batch. I really enjoyed Omega a lot, and I didn't think that would be the case when I first saw the trailer. I thought, are we going to have like the annoying kid sister kind of tagging along, bugging everybody? and not the case at all. I've really enjoyed her character so far, and kind of loving the example she's setting. And we see kind of the changes she brings about with Wrecker at the end of the episode. But I've really enjoyed her so far, and kind of excited about what she'll be able to teach the Bad Batch, as well as, you know, what she'll be able to learn from them along the way.
So at first, when you were talking, I thought that Tom had a clone of his own, because Tom had said the same thing about Omega. And Tom, is it fair to say that she is continuing to grow on you?
Absolutely. I was going to reflect that again this time and say, you know, I've been really happy with her as a character and the dynamics that she brings to the Bad Batch. I think it's a nice, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess it's just a nice mix. And I agree.
Juxtaposition?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Ryder, that she does seem to be, I don't know about in comparison to Hunter, but certainly in comparison to the others, she does seem to be sort of the adult of the group, or have a different perspective for sure.
Yeah, precocious, wise beyond her years. And it's pretty cool because she's got like this nice innocence, but it's not wrapped in naivete. I mean, she seems very world wise, even though she's only been on Camino her entire life. But I think it's because of her DNA, her self-confidence, and who knows what the other reasons are. But I find her fascinating. I think it's cool that she was really cool about sharing. There's no pretense about her. She's almost too good to be true, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing, or maybe it will be. I guess time will tell on that. But the Marauder has to crash land. Before that, though, and in time, I'm really curious to get your take on this. We see more interplay between Echo and Tech. It appears, based on the last two episodes, that these two are going to have a very unique relationship, where it goes like this. Tech is being Tech. Echo is really annoyed that Tech is sort of ignoring obvious things, and Tech is too busy doing his thing to even bother. It's going to cause some frustrating times, but it certainly is going to cause a lot of comedy as well.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I look at Echo and sometimes I forget that he's actually he's a regular clone soldier.
A reg.
Yeah. I get wrapped up in the fact that he's got this new bionic arm that plugs into, all of these ports. He seems to be very technologically minded, but he's a soldier. And so he's a lot more pragmatic. He's a lot more down to earth, whereas Tech has that sort of lofty, he's not concerned with anything else around him except the job that he's working on, which of course he's expert in. And I appreciate that about Tech, is that he's the best at what he does, except there's times that he needs to sort of open his eyes or just have an awareness that there are things going on around him. And I think that's where the sort of the fun conflict, yet the fun, is that possible? Fun conflict? Yeah. That's where the fun conflict and the interplay comes in that's somewhat enjoyable. So I do appreciate this sort of new partnership, the Bert and Ernie, the Felix and Oscar kind of feel, the kind of feel that's coming along with these two.
The Tom and Corey. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty good. So, Ryder, you going to say something?
No, I'm just chuckling along. I just really, I felt the same way about Tech and Echo, and I've kind of noticed that their interplay is, I feel like it's going to go somewhere, and it's going to be enjoyable wherever we go with it.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. But what isn't fun is suddenly the Marauder falls out of hyperspace because Echo, doesn't seem concerned because life support is fine. But Echo's like, are you kidding me? And as a side note, Mason and I have been going back watching old Clone Wars episodes where Echo was featured. And it's been cool to see him in his evolution as a regular clone, to eventually what he's going to be, like the bionic arm that you mentioned, Tom. So that's just kind of a side note, but I highly recommend that people go back and do that through the 7 seasons of Clone Wars, because it's cool. It's cool to see how they eventually gel together. But they're going to have to crash land on the Ordo moon, and this is a fascinating part. And I'll talk about this first. What I really like, and I talked about this on Facebook Live on Monday, is that they have to basically strap themselves in and secure themselves for the crash landing. Wrecker keeps saying, we're going to die. And then he sees Omega's reaction. He switches that really quickly to, we're going to be fine. But what I love is that they pull over their heads this device that looks like they're about to go on the rock and roller coaster in Hollywood studios or some sort of a roller coaster in general. That can't be an accident, but I thought that was really kind of a fun little Easter egg.
I thought the same thing. I thought, is that a Disneyland ride? And then I was trying to think back to other ships that we've seen in Star Wars. Did they all have those kind of harnesses to hold you in? But I don't think so. So
I don't think so either.
I thought the same thing. It looks like a lot of fun.
The Marauder has these special I mean, they are the Bad Batch, and we saw them in their first introduction in season 7. They came in for, it wasn't a crash landing, but they certainly had an aggressive landing. And so maybe this is something that Tech or one of them put in because of that sort of attitude in flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. But we see this a lot with Wrecker, is that he's a sweetheart deep down inside. He's really not that deep down inside. He's a softie for kids. And the fact that he changes that to realizing that she's watching him. But the thing is, they're always on the cusp of expecting her to panic or be a kid or freak out.
Yeah.
And she's looking quite quietly and almost meekly at them for strength. But then they reassure her, and it's almost like she is waiting for them to reassure her of her faith in them, not her faith in herself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, she seemed a little scared after they landed, but she totally seems calm every other time. And the Bad Batch, maybe because they've seen so much, or at least Wrecker, he panics a little bit. She hasn't seen anything off of Camino, so maybe she doesn't know what to be scared of. She's never experienced flying in a ship, I guess, and so maybe she doesn't know what to be scared of yet. She hasn't learned that yet.
That's a really cool point. And I like, and at the end, when it does sort of settle down, what might reflect that even more is when she says, "Is it over?"
Yeah.
As if, she doesn't know. I mean, it was pretty traumatic, a hard landing, and just wanting to know, is it over? So I really like that take.
Yeah, for sure. So the problem is that the capacitor sustained damage. They can't go to hyperspace, but Tech believes that they have one left, but they don't have time to deal with that because, well, first, I guess before they have to go on their little mini adventure on this moon. Of course, it's always a moon, right? Never the planet itself.
Never the planet.
But there's a moment of, we're going to have some crosshair stuff going on here because we did in the second episode. But Omega finds this long case and she wonders, is this the pot that we need? And I love her accent, by the way. Mason is becoming an expert in talking Omega, but it's Crosshair. So we're going to talk a lot about Crosshair. So let's just focus on where we're at in the episode because we haven't actually seen him yet. But I was relieved. I don't know how you guys feel, but I was relieved to see that there actually going to be some emotional beats to him not being with them, and they actually miss him. In fact, Wrecker even says it.
Yeah,
that feels
when
good.
She pulls,
Go ahead,
absolutely. Tom. When she pulls that out, every one of them sort of stops and pauses. I mean, and there's that beat of sort of missing, and I wasn't sure what it was. I remember when I first watched it, I was kind of like, what did she find? And then when he says that's I forget what it is. It's his weapons case or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
Weapon
and you
kit.
just sort of have that sort of pit in your stomach or in your chest, and that was so well done.
It really was.
Yeah, and I like comparing that situation where they actually miss somebody that's gone to later on when the Imperials lose somebody. Th're just like, well, it's the cost of doing business, basically. So a lot more feeling in the Bad Batch.
Good point. A very good point. An important point too. The idea of humanity is going to be a pervasive theme in this series, and that's nowhere more prevalent than when we were introduced to Project War Mantle, which is a group of an elite squad of recruits that are going to be under the command of Crosshair. And he's basically the prototype for this sort of a thing. It's pretty cool. And if you were on StarWars.com looking at Dan Brooks' declassified segment, he talks about the fact that it's the idea of Project War Mantle is one of several Imperial projects that Jen Erso uncovers in Rogue One, which is pretty cool. But when they first show these 4 troopers, there's a lot of interesting things that happen. Ryder, I'll let you kind of kick this one off. Talk to me about Project War Mantle and the whole setup for this and what you kind of took from it.
Well, what I noticed at first was Rampart mentions the chain codes, which we end up hearing later on in The Mandalorian. But it reminded me this whole situation of I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Young Guns 2 or the story of Billy the Kid where his friend Pat Garrett becomes the sheriff and has to chase him down. I felt like it felt a little bit like that with me with Crosshair being put in charge of these new recruits and being sent to basically hunt down his friends. At the same time, the Kaminoans are worried that their clone project is going to be out of business. Basically, they won't be needed if the Empire gets volunteer soldiers. The other thing I noticed is that I'm not sure what the blonde Imperial's name is, but he reminded me a lot of Val Kilmer. So I couldn't get that out of my mind after I saw that the first time.
Huh.
I don't know if anybody else thought that, but I just noticed that.
Well, he's certainly the lead. He appears to be the most vocal of the four of them.
Yeah.
Tom, what do you want to say about Project War Mantle?
Well, it took me back to the book Tarkin.
Yeah.
And while it's not a significant scene, but there's a scene where they're loading up the ship before they go, and the details of the story are kind of fading from me, but they're loading it up, and there is an accident on the platform, and it happens to be a clone has made a mistake. And everyone's like, "Oh, those clones, they're worthless," and blah blah blah. And so I don't know, for some reason that moment in the book stayed in my head until this, where so now we're seeing, where that comes from, because Tarkin has very little faith in the clones, and I guess that also comes from the Clone Wars and his feelings of the way the Republic had battled. But this idea of Operation, what is it? War Mantle?
Project War Mantle.
War Mantle. Okay. I think it's interesting. The Empire always seems to have some grand project going on, whether we go clear, to the extreme of a Death Star, to here we're talking about how are we going to manage clones and use them to our benefit. And so this is sort of the test, and they power up the chip in Crosshair, and let's see how it works as with him as the leader leading an elite squad. I think it's really interesting.
And it is kind of interesting that there is not kind of interesting. It is interesting that there is already tension. There's already very much sort of like in a wolf pack. There's like sort of a jockeying for power or position. Crosshair doesn't really seem to be interested in drama. How much of that is his unique personality and how much of that is because of the manipulation of his inhibitor chip? It's probably a nice combination of the both, to be honest. Because if Hunter were in this situation, I feel like I don't think what would have happened, but here we are. So at least a very interesting, as we said earlier, juxtaposition of what's going on with them. It's always been interesting to me to see the transition between the clones to the stormtroopers. And now we've got much, much more detail about how that happens and why that happens. And it's not an overnight thing. I think we sort of, at least in my mind, it kind of happened overnight with the creation of the Empire by Palpatine. But we're seeing that that's not actually the case. Later, the four are in this, like, basically their barracks. And I did think that the female was Iden Versio at first, but it doesn't seem to be Iden Versio. And it couldn't be time-wise because doesn't show up for another 19 years in the story. Still, I thought it was kind of cool. But what that lead Val Kilmer type stormtrooper says is, I want to get paid. I joined the Empire to get paid, to get fed, and to get a roof over my head. The Empire does this more than the Republic did for me. So you've got it's not like everybody in the Empire is evil for the sake of evil or because they're all world conquerors. It's because this is the best opportunity for me to survive and to take care of my family. But
got a paycheck.
There's a paycheck, exactly. But their scruples certainly are going to be a very, very important aspect of this. Before we get to that, let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Ordo Moon Dragon and a very shocking sequence with Crosshair. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
If you are getting ready to plan that Walt Disney World or Disneyland vacation, look no further than MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. And it is a no-cost, no-obligation quote. That's right. You can have them help you set up your vacation exactly how you want to make it work for you and your family. They'll give you all kinds of tips about what is the best day to go to what parks, how to use the park reservation system on either coast, and what the lines are like and what that means for you as far as planning and getting there when the park opens. And whether you are an experienced vacation planner or you are a first-timer, they can help you as well. They contact you throughout the trip to make sure things are going well, to give you suggestions and advice, or answer any questions that you might have, and you will have them when you're traveling on these amazing vacations. And there's nothing better than having Becky Mankin and her team at MEI and Mouse Fan Travel to help you as you go along. Becky Mankin and her team are fantastic, and I use them both for travel, for Coffee with Kenobi, and for my family vacation. So if you feel safe and comfortable traveling, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel will help you get to the Disney theme parks, the cruise lines when they open, the future Star Wars Halcyon, the Galactic Star Cruiser, and of course, Celebration 2022 in Anaheim. If you have any questions or want to go ahead and get a free, no obligation quote, please be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel and let them know that Dan Z and Coffee with Kenobi sent you.
We are back. We're going to talk now about the Ordo Moon Dragon. Tom, we got a fun little sequence in the cockpit where, you know, the power is going out on the Marauder. Something's going on. What is the deal? And then wackiness ensues. Tom, talk to me about all the little fun sequences from this.
Well, of course, you know, you have this did not occur to me until I went to social media, just in general, wasn't looking for anything in particular. And how many people compared this sequence to The Empire Strikes Back and the Minox? And I was like, oh, gee, that never occurred to me.
Really?
But you have this. No, it did not. I
raised my hand
why.
when you said that.
Well, so you have, you know, and so Mika, who's sitting in the cockpit, and the dragon kind of scurries across the windows, and they all come running in. What is it? And then, oh, it can't be anything. And then the power goes out. And so here they come on. They put the masks on. Why didn't I see this? They put the masks on and they walk out with the flashlights and are inspecting the hull. They find that, in fact, don't they put the new converter in, or the power piece in?
Yeah.
And that happens first, and then so then they come back out and they discover that it's missing.
Correct.
And I have to be honest with you, when he's shining that flashlight around, there were some rocks or something. I could have swore they were the egg shells of the spider creatures in the Mandalorian. When they showed those little things with the holes, I was like, are these the spiders? And okay, obviously that was wrong. And I'm glad, because we got a new creature, which, you know, is one of the things I was looking forward to in the Bad Batch, was sort of the preview of the creatures. And this was a completely new creature that I don't recall being in the previews. No. And so this little guy is fast. He's a hungry little dude, wants his energy drink. And so we have, you know, and so we have this scurrying around, and now because there's only one, and they really set that up pretty clearly, that there's only one of these power converters that they're going to put into the ship, and now it's gone.
He's like a Pokemon a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of is. Yeah, you're right.
So, Ryder, did you think of The Empire Strikes Back in this sequence, or were you?
I did. Yeah, I did. I thought. I also wondered, how many creatures are there in Star Wars that actually feed on, you know, ships? It seems like this happens quite often, and on those when they go to those places, they can't breathe the air outside, so they always need the masks. But yeah, I thought this scene was good. It was fine. I was, kind of hoping that if they'd known that these Ordo Moon dragons fed on electricity, maybe they could have just fed it a flashlight to start. But I guess it took, hindsight's 2020. So we would have had a 20-minute episode instead of 28 if we'd done that, I guess.
Right. Ryder Waldron, Monday morning quarterback.
That's what I do. I just critique. Let me tell you everything that's wrong after the fact.
No, it's valid. But the fun part about this is I certainly thought I had the Empire Strikes Back vibe because of the cockpit and the way that the angle of the shot and the way the light reflected. But when they're walking around outside and they're flashing the lights, and there's something sinister out there because it's Star Wars, I got very much the original Alien vibes too. And I thought that was kind of a cool little thing where they were creating that atmosphere. One thing that Bad Batch has been really good at through the first 3 episodes is creating tension, suspense, and a little bit of terror. Yeah, and definitely. so that's cool. So yes, they secure it. They secure the object, the capacitor, but then that pesky little Ordo Moon dragon takes it. And Tech did warn them that thing would probably be out there, but they don't seem all that worried. I mean, they're more like, all right, let's get this part. Let's move on. What they continue to do, and there's a great conversation with this, is they don't immediately kill these creatures or aliens, which I think is cool and important. But more important, probably for the purposes of this episode, is the fact that Hunter and Omega have a conversation about Crosshair. And she says, you shouldn't be angry at Crosshair. He can't help it. And Hunter says, something really insightful to what is going on in his brain. He says, I'm angry at myself. I shouldn't have left him behind. Ryder, should he have left him behind?
Well, I don't know that he had a choice at the time. I mean, his lives were on the line, and Crosshair was trying to kill him. So I think it was probably the right move at the time, because if Crosshair was able to kill the entire Bad Batch, there would be no way to go back and save him later on. At which I would guess, Tom mentioned, he didn't know what the goal of the Bad Batch was. I would guess that may turn out to be their ultimate goal, is to save Crosshair. And with some of the knowledge that Omega has about the inhibitor chips, and Tech is also kind of putting things together too. I think they'll be able to figure out somehow if they can get that chip out of him. Maybe they can get him back. But yeah, Omega has said that that's what the chip is meant to do. So you can't blame him. I mean, he's programmed that way. Just like maybe you can't blame the clones for following Order 66. And they were programmed to do it.
And there's this underlining thing that happens when they crash land. Wrecker hits his head on the vessel, but he's getting a headache, and it's impossible not to think, oh no, his chip is starting to work. Or maybe, maybe there's something going on in there. There's certainly precedents for that throughout the history of Star Wars. That's certainly a harbinger of some potentially bad things to come. But Ryder brought something up that Tom mentioned at the top of the show, and that is basically what is the purpose of the Bad Batch? Because when you think about it, Tom, there is no MacGuffin. There is no, we've got to get this sacred object. We've got to go here. We've got to do this. But there really isn't that. It's pretty much just, we got to regroup. We got to make a plan. But they don't seem to have a direct mission. What do you make of that, Tom?
I think it's coming. It just, and maybe this is the whole point.
Oh, is it a flaw in the storytelling?
I don't think so. And maybe this is exactly what they want. As a viewer, I'm compelled to learn more about the Bad Batch to try to discover, what is the purpose going to be. And I think secondarily, they don't know still what their purpose is. They were clones. They were created to fight a war that is now, quote unquote, over, and they're sort of discovering what is their purpose, and discovering that there is actually a civil war coming as precursor, or as previewed by Saw Gerrera in episode 2. And so I think we're just sort of in this waiting period along with them. And so I don't know that just as a viewer, I feel like there's lack of purpose, but I'm pretty sure, that this is coming along. I'm not pretty sure. I'm certain that it's coming along, and we will very quickly see purpose. And I agree with you, Ryder. I believe probably at this point in my head, the purpose it has something to do with Crosshair. that what you said just a few minutes ago, Dan, is something that just sort of was an underlying feeling, and just a feeling of unease in me. And that was the whole constant Wrecker holding the back of his head, sort of complaining and ow and I mean, he was shot, and he's complained less about the shoulder hurting than he is about this. So I thought that was really concerning, but the episode doesn't ever address it at this point. And so he's holding the side and he's holding the area. Now, granted, he hit his head in the crash. That was very clear when he goes ow and when they're coming down. But it's continuous. It's continuous throughout the entire episode. So I find that to be quite concerning, and perhaps there's going to be some connections that are going to start coming on, because you've got Crosshair, then you've got Wrecker with a headache, and you've got Tech working on the inhibitor, whatever that headpiece is that he's working on, that I'm guessing is going to inhibit the inhibitor or something like that.
And Omega seems to know a lot about this inhibitor chip, so
she does.
Thank goodness that could come into play. I hope they don't telegraph it quite so clearly like that, but either way, there's underlying tension, and I think I hadn't really thought about what is the purpose, but it had been kind of nagging me too. So I'm glad that you brought it up. And to me, it's similar to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whereas we had to spend the entire episode or the entire season trying to learn alongside the Falcon that he is worthy of the mantle of Captain America. So too, we need to learn their purpose as they're trying to learn it together. So it's a pretty cool method of storytelling, because we're just as confused as the main characters. Yeah, and we don't have that luxury of the Star Wars safety net that we had with the prequels, where we know where the story's going. We just don't know how it's going to get there. For this, not only do we not know where it's going, but we definitely don't know how it's going to get there or who's going to survive at the end of it. So there are so many unknowns. And I mean, if now if we're saying this at the end of season 1 and we still don't know, then that's a problem. But at this point, I think this is all part of the anticipation of where we're going to go.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
So Grand Moff Tarkin, I don't know if he's a Grand Moff yet, but he's pretty close. He says, all right, let's take this new group, and you know what? Let's see if you guys can do what Clone Force 99 could not do. Go to Onderon, find Saw Gerrera's insurgents, and get rid of them. So guys, this is a heavy sequence. Had I known where this sequence was going to go, I probably would have second guessed showing it to Mason, at least without warning him or giving him a heads up first. But it's a pretty powerful moment. Tom, I'll let you explain this one and kind of your thoughts over what happens with Crosshair on Onderon. Before we get to that, when they're on the shuttle going to Onderon, the lead trooper again, he doesn't call him Crosshair or Sergeant or whatever his title is. He calls him Clone in a very pejorative type manner. We'll see who's in charge later, Clone, that kind of thing. So we get to the planet. I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, that he writes off Crosshair from the beginning. I mean, he says, "Yeah, I'll follow your orders, but we'll see how long this lasts." So they arrive, and they seem quite formidable as they come into the insurgency camp. Very, very similar to the way the Bad Batch would. Crosshair's in back, shooting, sniping from a distance as the troopers move in. Very efficient, as you would expect Crosshair, a group that Crosshair is a part of, to do. They get in there, they discover Saw Gerrera is not in the camp. And so Crosshair makes the decision, because good soldiers follow orders, and he took the orders of Tarkin quite seriously, and probably goes back to when the Bad Batch or Clone Force 99 was sent there and finished what Hunter could not, and orders the troopers to execute all in the camp, innocents, soldiers alike. The trooper, now I'm assuming it's the same trooper that was questioning him at the beginning or on the shuttle, says, no, that's not what I signed on for. I did not sign on for this. We take them prisoner. We bring them back, and essentially, and this is what was so shocking to me. I'm assuming, I don't know, there's two items here that are quite shocking. Yeah. But Crosshair raises his weapon and essentially, I don't know what's the term, executes the
Yeah, all
trooper
of the
right in front
above,
of
yeah.
everyone and says, "Finish it," and walks away. And we do not see it, of course, but you certainly hear the blaster fire. It reminded me of Kylo Ren's order
Mhm.
on the camp in The Force Awakens,
And
where
Jakku, yeah.
and Jakku, where Finn freezes. But we didn't have any freezing of troopers in this one. And they finish off the camp, and you just feel, you feel the weight of the Empire is all right there in that moment.
And it comes from a clone.
Yeah.
Ryder, what
Yeah.
were your takeaways from this?
I feel like, Crosshair knows that he's loyal. But it's almost like he doesn't have a choice. His chip is making him, we assume, making him loyal to the Empire. And Rampart has said previously that, basically skills can be taught, but loyalty can't. And so, there's a couple of ways to get people loyal, either get them to love you and respect you, or to strike fear in them. And, you see your friend, or, your fellow trooper get shot by your leader. Well, you're probably going to fall in line. So you're not the next one shot. At this point, it's just, survival mode. And, you're not so worried about your paycheck or your food or the roof over your head at this point. You just want to stay alive. And your worst enemy is the one you're supposed to be led by. And Crosshair said, good soldiers follow orders. And it's almost like he's almost forced to repeat it. He can't help himself but to repeat this.
Yeah.
And I felt like this is what makes the Empire so evil. And sometimes we didn't see that in the movies. We see Alderaan blown up, but we didn't see the faces of the people that were destroyed at that point by the Empire. And this, we see these innocent people that just wanted a ride somewhere by Saw Gerrera's people, and they get murdered by these troops who are supposed to be, basically helping out the galaxy. They're representatives of the Empire, and they're murdering their own people now.
It's absolutely chilling. It's one of the more chilling moments in recent memory in the history of Star Wars, in my opinion. The fact that they're all wearing black, sinister harbingers of Vader. But the fact that, he says, I'm willing to do what needs to be done. He says quite clearly, in almost very much in a challenging manner, are you not willing to comply? Are you not going to comply? And he says, no, I'm not. None of us are going to. So he turns around, and then he steps up to him and says, good soldiers follow orders, and blasts him in cold blood. The other troopers are shocked, but he says, finish it. So he walks away, doesn't even watch, and they destroy these civilians who clearly say, we don't know anything. We were told we could get safe passage off the planet. And to make it even more extra disturbing is the fact that one of the troopers has a flamethrower. I mean, come on, that's not. There's zero mercy with that, and these are innocent people. Yeah. It's no wonder, between this and the other things, it's no wonder that Saw Gerrera ends up being the embittered, horrific person that he is because of the things like this. I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff. And there was a part of me that thought, I'm not sure if this belongs in a kid's show, but maybe it's not a kid's show. Maybe it's somewhere in between. I mean, you guys have young kids. What did you watch this with them, and what were their reactions?
I did not. My older kids have not been watching this. My 9-year-old has watched the first episode, and then I see this part, and I'm thinking, maybe I'll try to steer him away from that. It's just it is pretty shocking to see just cold-blooded murder. Yeah. It struck me as even worse than in The Force Awakens on Jakku. I don't know why. I think because we saw some humanity in Finn and knew that, okay, he's going to lead us away from this darkness. There's a little light here. But there's no light in this group. I mean, the one that was actually going to stand up to Crosshair is dead now. And these others are, right now, they're not going to. So, yeah, it felt a little darker than The Force Awakens.
Tom, what about you?
That is a great point. And I'm so glad you said that, because you're right. The Finn was shot and killed.
Yeah, right.
And so, yes, Dark Cloud. Kaylee has not seen this. She's the one that's watching Bad Batch with me. And she has not seen it because of the scene. But I'm actually looking forward to watching this with her because of this scene, because she's getting to an age, she just turned 14, and this is going to be a good conversation of real world and how some horrible things happen in the world. And so, we have to be aware of it. And then we'll talk about Saw Gerrera and what you had said, Dan, because, he is an extremist. And what leads people to those feelings? Well, could it be things like this? So I'm actually really looking forward to that conversation, but that conversation doesn't happen with a 10-year-old. I mean, it can, but not at the same level that I want to take it with my 14-year-old.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Mason's 7, and we had to talk about it right away because it happened.
Yeah, right.
My jaw kind of dropped, and I said, "Whoa!" And it was a really important moment about you talking about kindness, humanity, and what would you do in that situation, and stuff like that. Of course, we tried to, I tried to bring it down to a different sort of explanation. But it was important to talk about it with him. And that's why, of course, everybody who has kids, you certainly recommended to talk about these challenging moments. I know you guys do too with your children, because it helps them kind of process something that's difficult for adults to process.
It absolutely does. And the thing that I have to remind myself is that the Clone Wars, after, I don't know, I'm going to say it's around season 3, it really wasn't a show for kids. It was animated, and it had Ahsoka in it, a young adult who would be a young adult character in novels. But I don't know that I ever felt like the Clone Wars was made for children. It was made for teenagers and adults.
Yeah.
And this is an offshoot. This is a continuation, I suppose, of the Clone Wars. And so it's going to continue to deal with heavy issues, and certainly issues of the Empire and the beginning of an empire are going to have some really tough spots. I don't think we're done. I don't think this is the end of it.
No, I mean, it is called Star Wars. Wars. That's an important part of this, and I feel similarly to how I did about Kylo Ren after The Last Jedi. If Crosshair, even though he clearly can't help it per se, if he does end up becoming part of the team, and clearly they want him back, I mean, it's going to be hard to redeem someone like this for this. And if he is redeemable and they get this chip out of him, which is certainly possible, he's going to have he's going to be his own worst enemy for a long time, because that's going to be hard to live that one down. So we'll change gears a little bit. Omega is literally to the rescue. Hunter gets knocked out. And those breathing apparatuses, I'm so fascinated by them. They're like, I can picture them having a USB connection to them. They're wireless. I don't know how they fasten to the face, but you turn them on, they light up, and they can breathe in them. She bravely goes down into the den of the Ordo Moondragon, and sort of does her own Belly of the Whale situation for all you Joseph Campbell fans out there. And then she has Hunter's blaster, but she doesn't use it. She shakes, and she's tempted to use it. We know she can. She had a great shot against Crosshair into the first episode. But instead she discovers through quick thinking in her brain that it's the light might be, imagine that. The light is the answer. A nice metaphor there.
Wow.
Or she distracts the Ordo Moondragon, who apparently is not all that dangerous at all to human beings. And it was a little scary until we realized that this thing is not a threat to her. Then she crawls out and even yells out, "I'm coming! I'm heading to you, Hunter." and I thought, "Oh, okay." I don't know if I would have yelled out loud with this creepy dragon there, but there's this it's just kind of a great moment that he sees yet again, that she can take care of herself. Now, I hope that doesn't become the only emotional beat. Omega and Hunter having a little heart-to-heart, Wrecker doing something charming for Omega, and then we're on to the next episode. But it works well here. What do you think, Ryder?
Yeah, I think as we're just getting to know the characters, it does work well. And, I can see it becoming kind of Hunter and Omega kind of, I don't know, not total clone, and I hate to say clones, but mirror images of each other, where Hunter has explained earlier that his enhanced skill is tracking. Well, does Omega have an enhanced tracking skill also? Is she some sort of enhanced clone also? Or is she just a quick learner? And it's impressive because we talked about she's never been off of Camino. She's never seen dirt before when we saw her in an earlier episode, and now she's climbing down like into a cave with this dragon. And I mean, I would have been running the other way. Sorry, Hunter, you're gonna have to fend for yourself. I'm heading back to the ship. But she doesn't. She's brave. She goes down in there and figures it out, gets out of there, doesn't seem scared at all. And I hope this isn't, like you said, something that isn't, a totally ongoing thing. But I think as we're getting to know the characters, it kind of sets the stage pretty well.
So Ryder, Tom and I are outside the Ordo Moon Dragon's lair, and you're just going to leave us?
Well, it's every clone for himself at this point, guys. No,
man.
I as an adult would not, but when I see Omega getting off the ship and telling Hunter, I'll come along, I'm thinking, oh, it's one of those, maybe it's a fatherly thing. I'm thinking, no, leave the young child on the ship where she can be safe. Don't go out there. But then, of course, it turns out that I'm the idiot and I'm totally wrong. And Omega saves Hunter's life and basically saves the mission and gets the capacitor back. And so, I'm wrong. But no, of course, I'm super brave. I'm going to save you guys if you're out there.
Yeah, I've always said that about you. Hey, we kid because we love. That's great. So yeah, that was a good little part, and we needed some sort of warmth after the horrific what happened on Onderon. But at the end, there are two things that happen. And one, we get a final conversation with Tarkin where he clearly passes the baton to Rampart, and even calls him Admiral, so we get to see him, elevated in his command, gets his promotion. But he says, well, the clone program is not cost prohibitive, but he says until the time is right, it's going to continue to serve a purpose. Lama Su and Nala Se have a conversation that Jango Fett's original genetic code or material is weakening. I mean, they've used it for 3 years or longer, however long that the clone army was created after Sifo Dyas did his thing, willingly or not. But the clones are going to be around for a while, and it appears, they said we need another source. It certainly appears that they're going to use Crosshair and try to clone him. So that's certainly going to make things interesting. Tom, anything you want to say about that?
Well, I thought, I guess it makes sense that Crosshair would be the person. I guess where my mind went with that is they're going to now try to track down Omega, and that Omega is the one who's going to be the model or the clone that they will model after. She seems there, I think, I just feel like when Tech reveals, and maybe it was very obvious to everybody, but when Tech reveals that, the fifth modified isn't Echo, he's a Reg, that Omega is the fifth, I see her as a bit more perfect, because they said that didn't she say that the Jango Fett base has sort of weakened or faded, and so they need someone new. And I just feel like that if the Bad Batch was the initial, that perhaps Omega is like a second generation and is a little bit more perfect. And that's why she, to me, it's almost like, and Ryder, you alluded to this, she sees someone do something, then she can do it. She says, what are you doing with the dirt? He says, well, I'm tracking. I'm using this to track. So then she comes over, picks up the dirt. And it's almost like she learns immediately after watching, because she also observes Tech, even though the focus
like
is
Taskmaster in Marvel?
Kind of. I mean, yeah. I mean, because obviously the focus has been on Hunter and Omega, but she's also watching Tech, and there are things that Tech does that then she will turn around and do something very similar or make an observation. So obviously she knows a lot about the inhibitor chip, but is that because Tech has been talking about it? And so like her brain then works through that and now knows. I don't know. I'm trying not to speculate on that. But so I guess where my mind went when they said we need a new, sample, or we need a new base, my mind went to they're going to go searching for Omega as the new base. So Crosshair makes a lot of sense. He's in their possession. They can use him in that way.
He's clearly
and so
proven his mettle.
Yeah, and so, but it's the funny thing is, it's not so much he isn't what they need. It's the strength of his inhibitor chip is what they need. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To take DNA from him, that doesn't do much because it's the inhibitor chip that's causing him to do the things that he's doing. So I don't know,
Right. But not the skill of how he does it. And then they do say, we need another donor. And they look out at the table where the Bad Batch normally sits for the meals, and they say,
"True,"
but they're not on Camino. And then Nalase says, or Lamassu says, one of them is. And then the next shot is of Crosshair.
Okay, yeah. I guess I just missed that that replay of things, but yeah, absolutely.
I like your version better, though. I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, especially when we talked about how. She almost seems too perfect, and who knows? What were you gonna say, Ryder?
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I agree with Tom because that's where my mind went immediately, was that they're going to be searching for Omega, and when they look down at the table, I thought maybe this is kind of give us a hint that they're going to go look for her, but then it goes to Crosshair. I thought maybe that's a way to throw us off the scent right now. I feel like Omega is going to play a part, and she may be the MacGuffin for the Kaminoans or the Empire or something, because they keep talking about a superior clone. And the problem with these Bad Batch guys is they're kind of faulty clones, and they have some enhanced skills, but I don't know if they're superior. And it's talking about Nala Se's experiment. Lamassu mentioned something about Nala Se's experiment, and they need a direct source. So my mind went like Tom's, right to Omega. So I may be wrong, but I'm going to be wrong with Tom. And there's worse company to be in there.
We'll stick together.
That's right.
That's right. Interesting. I'm not sure. I do think it's going to be Crosshair, but we'll find out. And who knows when that's going to happen. So at the very end of this, to completely throw the system of balance to good again, we have a wonderful moment. It was pretty much the primary number one for everybody's top 5 list of top 5 favorite things top 5 favorite moments from room replacements on Facebook Live last Monday. But it's when Wrecker shows Omega that she's got her own bunk, she's got her own quarters, she's got her own room. He's done it. He's decorated it in Wrecker fashion, giving her, to me, the most powerful moment, not only her own place to just kind of unwind and do her thing, but it's filled with light. And she grew up on, Camino, where there is no light. There's just overcast and rain. But we've seen 3 episodes now where light literally makes her face light up with joy because she feels warm, she feels loved, she feels attended to, and she feels like she belongs and she's a part of something. I thought it was just an absolutely lovely thing. It got me a little choked up. I'm assuming, Ryder, you felt the same.
I did, and it's probably the dad thing again, but I felt like going to this scene from the previous scene where you see Crosshair walk in with the new troopers into the room where the Bad Batch was, and he kind of looks around and it almost seems like he kind of reflects on something. But then, you compare that or contrast that to this scene with Omega, and she looks out to the stars, and she's never been out in the stars before. And she just has, like, I don't know, it just makes her feel a part of the family. And you can see in the, behind him that the Bad Batch is kind of looking up at her, and it just felt like, they care about her. She feels included now. She's going to be here. So, and Hunter says one of them says something about, you're part of this squad now also. And it just felt like, they're going to take care of her. She's going to teach them something. And I really enjoyed this. And it takes a lot for one of these animated shows to get me kind of choked up, but that was one of the spots that did, for sure.
It was pretty great. Tom, anything on this?
Yeah, I think the word of this episode is juxtaposition, boys and girls, because I go back to, I didn't even think of the example that you just gave, where Crosshair looks into the bunk as everyone's sitting down, and he does have a moment there where I'm kind of like, whoa, is he overcoming the chip? Maybe, but I also go back to the scene, to the two scenes of the execution of the insurgents of Saw Gerrera, and then in the very next scene where Omega doesn't use violence to solve the problem, and I saw hope there. I saw hope in someone, and so here at the end of the episode, Wrecker has given Hope a new home. And that new home for Hope is with the Bad Batch. And yes, absolutely. That moment, I sat back on the couch early in the morning, and I couldn't do anything but just smile at that moment. First of all, part of it's because Wrecker has really grown on me in these first 3 episodes, but more so that, the episode starts with she's sitting on the floor, leaning against the Gronk droid or whatever those things are called. That thing's laying on the side, and she's leaning up against it, kind of at a tablet, very lonely looking.
Mm-hmm.
And here, Wrecker has done everything he can in his own way, as you mentioned, Dan, and made her a home. And so Hope has a home, and it's with the Bad Batch.
So that's awesome. So if we follow the line of logic to what we've been drawing, does that mean Omega is going to be curling a Gonk droid in a future episode?
She did see it happen.
That's true. Taskmaster couldn't do that either. It's a skill, not a power. Yes, pretty funny. All right, cool. So after the discussion, does anybody want to modify their grade at all? I'm pretty content with where I'm at.
Yeah, I feel good where I feel good where I started. There is some of the scenes tracking the dragon and stuff got a little slow for me, but they had a good point. But I'm going to keep it a B+.
Yeah, my B is a glasses half full B. Like it's leaning towards plus, but it was a great episode. But again, I think I said this about episode 2. I don't think in 6 episodes down the road, this is one we're going to talk about too much.
Yeah, I don't think it was a great episode. I thought it was a good one with some important things. Some one of the most powerful, chilling moments in recent Star Wars memory. A wonderfully heartwarming moment at the end, and a lot of interesting things with basically the dynamic of this group with and without Crosshair. I do think when he goes in that bunk and he looks around and his buddies aren't there, while they clearly annoy each other when they were together, I still think he misses his brothers, but I do not think that he's fighting that chip. I don't think he has that option, especially because the chip was boosted. If it wasn't boosted, I think maybe, but if Rex couldn't do it, then to me, Crosshair isn't going to be able to do it. But we'll see. We'll see.
Great point. Great point.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
As we near the end of the show today, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. We have a lot of fun and you'll make some new friends as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, go to www.cwkalliance.com and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zaire, MRZEHR, or on Instagram at DanZareCWK. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. Check us out on Pinterest or subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, you can find Facebook Live video, different interviews throughout the years, highlights of video coverage throughout the Coffee with Kenobi history, and the audio podcast itself. You can order my book, The Star Wars Book, which I co-wrote with Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Walmart, or anywhere books are sold. You can also find my writing on Coffee with Kenobi's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I am an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute occasionally to articles about Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. If you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired so you can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our Coffee with Kenobi sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet you want to go on your vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word, and I can't thank you enough for your help, for your support, and your friendship. I love so much being a part of this wonderful Star Wars community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for me and Coffee with Kenobi.
Very, very good, guys. Of course, always great to talk not only the Bad Batch, but Star Wars with all of you listening, and of course with you, Ryder and Tom. Gentlemen, please let everyone know where they can continue the conversation with you. Tom, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. On Twitter, you can catch me at Draftline, DRAFTLINE. And hey, on Blogger, you can check out my thoughts and ideas about things on my blog, Seeking Positivity in the Galaxy.
I love it. And you are also the co-host of a
Yes.
of a podcast, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That would be the CWK Pour-Over with you, of course, and the very famous Corey Clubb.
Oh, for members of the CWK Alliance. And Ryder, where can people continue the conversation with you?
Yeah, so the best place is probably on Twitter at Ryder Waldron DDS. And if you want to hear me talk about Star Wars more, I do a podcast called Idiot's Array, where we talk about Star Wars. I do it with Alan Zog and Mark Suter, so we have a lot of fun talking about Star Wars there.
Well, thanks again to Ryder and Tom for joining me to talk about Replacements, the third episode in Season 1 of The Bad Batch. Be sure to join us Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time to talk about the fourth episode of The Bad Batch, as well as whatever is going on in the world of Star Wars. I want to thank everybody again for your support, for your conversation, and for spreading the word about Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to bring a friend, not only to Facebook Live, but invite them to join you on the show. Maybe it will spark some cool conversations with you and your friends and family, or who knows what else. And if you want to add anything to the conversation like I just did a little bit ago, be sure to email me, danz@coffeewithkenobi.com, and I'm happy to share it on the air. Have a great weekend, everybody, and remember, as always, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.